counselor, because sometimes you don't get any credit for, no matter what you do, you still don't get any credit. The client will probably think that they are the ones that did all the work. And they're right to some extent, but of course, if you weren't there, nothing would have happened. They wouldn't have changed. So the reality is that you really do need to be there. So once they're in the preparation stage, of course, at this stage they can identify their roles in problems and begin to set goals. And the goals are the most important part. I don't know if you're a list maker. My wife's a list maker. She sets herself goals, and sometimes she achieves them, and sometimes she doesn't. Here lately she's been having back problems, and because she's having back problems, she makes lists of things that she's going to do, and of course she's not getting anything done. She's not getting even the first job done, but she's a list maker. I don't know if you've ever been around a list maker before. They drive you crazy. Sometimes the list is more important than the jobs that they're doing, the fact that they're making a list. That's what always drives me crazy. Anyway, so they need to set goals, and it's really important for your client to set goals. It's important to state and restate the goals until both the client and the practitioner are clear about them. This is one of the times that being an obsessive-compulsive person is not a bad thing, because being obsessive-compulsive, I'm talking about the practitioner here, not the client. Being an obsessive-compulsive person, you're going to talk about these things all the time. You're going to be stating and restating the goals, reestablishing the goals that the client needs to achieve. Now obviously I'm not obsessive-compulsive to the extent that I let you guys turn things in whenever. If I were actually obsessive-compulsive, then I would be very strict as to when you turn things in and the fact that you got them in on time, because that would be very important to me. It would be important to me. I would be teaching you how to manage your time better. Of course, I don't care. Well, I do care. I care. I want you guys to get all this information, but I don't think there's a time limit on whether you need all the information for Chapter 7, Chapter 8, Chapter 9. You know, it's just as long as you get the information. That's all that I care about. And I'll tell you, it's being in college is really kind of interesting, because you come in contact with a lot of different individuals with a lot of different desires, a lot of different wishes for their students, and one of them seems to be time management. It seems to be very important to a lot of different people, but it's not to me. I can change if you guys want me to. I don't see any people going, no, just change. You're driving me crazy. I have driven people crazy, by the way, because of my flexibility. They don't like it. A lot of people do not like it because they, unless I set goal, unless I put a time limit on things, they don't put a time limit on things. And those people usually don't pass because they don't get all the tasks done that they need to get done. So we're talking about partializing here. Partializing involves breaking a complex problem into manageable parts. So that's one of the things that we need to do with our clients. We can't just drop a huge goal on their heads. We need to break that goal down into manageable parts. And of course that's known as partializing. Practitioner and client can decide which part of a problem should be dealt with first. This may be the easiest, the most painful, or one that can lead to the solvability of other aspects of the larger problem. So we're partializing at this stage. We're in the preparation stage. The client is ready to fix something, whatever it is that needs to be fixed. And sometimes it's the most painful part. And actually, if you've ever been around somebody who has been through Alcoholics Anonymous, the hardest part for them is admitting that they're an alcoholic. Okay. So this is exactly the same situation. Whether we're talking about alcoholism or something else, admitting that you've got a problem is the hardest part, and it can be the most painful part. I had a client that was gay, but he wouldn't admit it, and he kept coming in with all these different problems that we were trying to fix, and eventually, and that was his biggest problem. That all of his problems led from that, from the fact that he'd married somebody who he wasn't attracted to. Of course, he had children. His children didn't like him because he was superficial. And the reason he was superficial was because he was actually gay, and he didn't want to be in that relationship. So the hardest part for him was admitting that his sexual orientation was different than what he considered the norm. And what eventually happened, of course, was he went through this whole process. But the most painful part was him admitting that he was gay. And when he finally admitted that he was gay, everything kind of fell into place. Yes, he did divorce his wife, but his relationship with his children improved markedly, just amazingly. And so after that, of course, his life started. He didn't really fit. He was like a square peg in a round hole, and things just didn't really work out very well. But once he admitted that he was gay, the holes were no longer round. They were square, just like he was. So everything just started fitting into place. So actually, in his case, yes, it was painful. It was extremely painful. I had to talk him off of not really off of the ledge, but he was contemplating suicide after he had admitted what was going on. Once we got him off that ledge, once he convinced himself that this was something that he could handle, then everything turned out okay. His wife wasn't happy, so she was much happier with them not married. The children, of course, now they saw him as a real person, because before he was lying to everybody about just about everything, and now all of a sudden everything had corrected itself because he was being genuine with everyone, and because of that, of course, it was like the square peg slipping down into square holes at that stage, instead of him trying to fit himself into round holes. Anyway, so this stage, the admitting that you have a problem, it can be the most painful. For him, it was so painful that he almost committed suicide. But of course, we talked him off that ledge, and everything worked out after that. Much better, and he's an extremely happy person today. As a matter of fact, he's one of the leaders on the reservation up in Montana. He's one of the leaders. Whereas before, no one trusted him because he wasn't being genuine with himself, let alone with everybody else. And so this was really kind of an interesting situation. It's important to remember that the client's perception of what is manageable may be smaller than or different than the practitioner might see as possible. And of course, this is it's perspectives. It has to do with perspectives, either the client's perspective or the practitioner's perspective. It may be different. Okay, preparation stage. I don't know why it's doing this. Supporting self-efficacy. You need to encourage the client to solve their own problems, and that has to do with self-efficacy. That's actually what you're trying to do with your counseling sessions. The reality is you can't fix anybody, they have to fix themselves. Your job is to convince them that they can do that. And potentially give them tools to do that. And like I said before, a lot of times you're not going to get any credit at all for this. They're going to take all the credit, which is fine. I mean, as long as they're fixed, then everybody should be happy, including you, despite the fact you're not going to get a gold medal or whatever. You're a hero, but you're the only one that knows it. It's kind of like being in the military and doing something brave. And so who gets the medal? It's the officer gets the medal for telling you. Yeah, I know, it's kind of strange. Kind of irritating being the person that does it, and they're the ones that get the credit for it. The goal is to enhance clients' confidence and capability to cope. Yes, you're trying to give them that you're trying to empower them to be able to cope with their problems. Statements that recognize that the clients have already accomplished and identifies their strength can support their belief in themselves. And of course, this is one of the things that you're trying to do. You're trying to show them what strengths they have. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote the dissertation that I did. I was trying to show the people of Fort Belknap that they had resilience, and that resilience was very important to them, and it was a natural thing as far as they were concerned. So I was trying to give them self-efficacy, whereas everybody else was coming in and doing research, and they were doing research on child abuse, alcohol abuse, and all the drug problems that they have up there. And I was trying to show them how strong they were, and everybody else was trying to show them how weak they were, which didn't make any sense at all to me. But how did they get more money? This is one of the things that they complain to me about. If you show how strong we are, then the federal government won't give us more money to help us take care of our problems. I know. Does that make sense? Well, it does make sense, because yeah, they're right. If I showed that there was an alcohol problem on the reservation, then they would have given them more money to help combat the alcoholism, whether that was a problem or not. And actually, they did get more money. It didn't have anything to do with alcoholism. They built them a new jail, which is I thought was St. And they increased the number of policemen on the reservation. What is the government trying to tell you? You're all criminals. That's what they're trying to tell you. Oh my goodness gracious. That was the Bush administration. Don't get upset. The Bush administration. Interesting group of people. Okay, so we're still in the preparation stage. Problem identification. This concerns aiding the clients, identifying problems clearly. So you need to do that. They need to do that, actually. They need to tell you what their problem is. In larger systems, the families and different members may understand problems differently, of course. And if you've ever seen a family that has dynamic problems, problems of getting along in the family, the father has one idea, the mother has another idea, the kids have totally different ideas from the parents. So problem identification can be difficult in a family counseling situation. Clients often think of problems as something to stop, but the reality is they need, what a problem is a need to start doing something else. So instead of seeing it as a negative, you need to see it as a positive. They need to see it as a positive. It's like if you have an individual that is an alcoholic, they may see that they need to stop drinking, but the reality is they need to start a new lifestyle. They need to change, and of course it's that change that is a start in another direction. And of course, once you stop this individual from drinking as much as they are drinking, or drinking at all, actually, if you're really an alcoholic, then you can't drink ever again. You shouldn't drink ever again. It's a start. It's changing a lifestyle. That's actually what it is, or absolutely what it is. Changing your lifestyle. And if you don't change your lifestyle, nothing will change. Guess what? You can't go to the bar every night with your friends who are just drunk as skunks. It's going to be a situation where you can't go back into that situation, or you'll slip back to your old lifestyle. Ethical considerations in problem identification. Practitioners need to support essential ethical principles related to autonomy and self-determination. So it has to, the client has to agree with you. You can't force a problem on a client, whether they had that problem or not. And in the case of my friend who was gay, he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to even think about it. And I had to, oh geez, he used to come into my office. He always came in at quitting time and stayed for an hour or 2 hours, which my wife really enjoyed, since I was supposed to be home at 5 o'clock, and here I wasn't getting home until 6 or 7 o'clock. Why didn't he come in at 4? I know, it's one of those deals. Anyway, he used to come in and talk to me all the time, and he was having problems with his wife, he was having problems with his kids. His kids wouldn't listen to a word that he said. He was having problems at work, nobody understood him, you know, one of those kinds of things. And this was his problem. I mean, his problem was that he had a different sexual orientation than what he was projecting. But what he really needed to do was to admit it. And it took months to get him to admit that that was his problem. Once he did, of course, or once he just breached the subject. He breached the subject one night. He said, you know, maybe this is my problem. And I said, well, let's explore that. And of course, that was the night that I didn't get home until 9 o'clock. I don't, have I told you the story of what my wife does if I don't get home on time?
No.
She kills me. And when I say she kills me, she assumes that I've been killed in an automobile accident or something. This is, we didn't have cell phones. Cell phones don't work up in my home. Well, they do sometimes, but we didn't have cell phones. So if I was late getting home, she assumed that I was dead, which I guess is better than assuming that I'm having an affair with somebody. But as it turned out, she always kills me off. And then I get home and she made supper and she burned my part, of course, because she kept it in the oven or something, you know. But she always kills me off. She'd say, why didn't you call? Which is kind of interesting because he didn't want me to call. He didn't want me to call my wife. I don't know if he was trying to get me in trouble or what. Anyway, as things turned out, it took a couple of months for him to convince himself that that was his problem. But once he did, everything fell into place, as I said before. But of course, I couldn't breach the subject. It wasn't, if I had breached the subject, if I had mentioned that first, what would have happened? What would he have done? He would have become defensive and thrown up a wall, and we would never have gotten through that wall. And maybe that is what had happened to him before. He had been to counseling. I wasn't his counselor, I was just his friend. And I was only talking to him because nobody else would talk to him anymore. He had been to all the counselors. And they had thrown up this possibility, and he had rejected it completely. It had to come from him. And once he mentioned it, then we could start exploring it. But until he mentioned it, I couldn't breach the subject. Anyway, we need to give them the possibility of determining themselves what the problem is. Client decisions are influenced by culture, gender, age, and other factors. Lots, yeah. And so, you know, we talk about culture a lot. We talk about diversity, we talk about multiculturalism. What counselors would like to do, and actually this is what a lot of counselors will do, is that their clientele will be only one group of people. So if they're a wealthy white people, then potentially all their clientele are wealthy white people. And the reality is they understand these people better than anybody else because that represents their own culture. But of course, depending on where you're working, you may have a very diverse clientele. But the reality is culture is huge. Culture is gigantic, and you need to understand cultures. My education has been very diverse. As I told you before, I have degrees in a lot of different areas, and I think it's really important to accumulate as much information as possible. so that potentially you can deal with a lot of different things. For example, well, I have a degree in international relations that I picked up over in Germany, which is a nice place to pick up a degree in international relations, because I was actually living in a foreign country, dealing with, and this of course was in the 1980s, early 1980s, when we were having all these conflicts with the communist nations, especially the Russians, and we were in Germany at the time, and it looked like we were on the brink of war. What had happened? 1980, the Iranians kicked us out of Iran. Russia invaded Afghanistan at that stage. It looked like the Russians were trying to expand, and we thought that they were going to expand down into Iran, which would have put a huge thumb in the eye of the Middle East, because the Russians would have moved down into Iran and they could have destabilized the entire area. There was a ton of stuff going on at the time, and in order to understand people, we had to study what the people were like. And of course, we thought we were going to be going into the Middle East. We thought we were going to be dealing with the Iranians. We thought we were going to be dealing with the Iraqis. And of course, at the time, the Iraqis were our allies. Saddam Hussein was our ally, because the Iranians had just rebelled against us. And he actually started a war against Iran in order to, they were trying to take over that oil junction area down in the Shah al-Arab, that area in the Persian Gulf. But we thought we were going to go to war. So we needed to understand how the Persian mind worked. The Persian mind, the Persians are the Iranians. And the Arab mind, because of course that was Iraq and Syria and Saudi, especially Saudi Arabia, one of our major allies in the area. It's really kind of a tense situation. Why am I talking about this? Well, I'm talking about accumulating as much information as you possibly can. So one of the things that they were teaching us, not only was I learning this in international relations, but also they were giving us classes in understanding the Arab mind and understanding the Persians and understanding the Syrians and what the difference was between this group and that group. They were talking about the terrorist groups in that area. They were talking about the Kurds. If you understand who the Kurds are, they're like the orphans of the Middle East. They were talking about the Armenians, who are part of Turkey. A minority group in Turkey. So they were talking about all this stuff. So the reality is that you need to understand people's cultures. And one of the things that they were telling us is that if we go into that area, if we have conflict actually starts down there, and they of course assumed that it was, it eventually came out of Afghanistan, which is kind of odd because the Russians invaded Afghanistan and the Russians were controlling Afghanistan at the time, and Afghanistan has been a thorn in everybody's side for a couple hundred years, and here we are, now we're having problems with Afghanistan. Anyway, so they were talking about culture. So if you can understand people's culture, you can understand where their mind is, you can understand where they're coming from. Remember the individual that I was talking about who was gay, and the problem that I would have had if I had breached the subject with him. He would have thrown up a wall of defense against me. That's what he had done when he had talked to other counselors. He had just completely forgot about those people. He didn't even want to talk to them. But you need to understand people's culture so that you don't step on people's toes, so you don't go against their taboos. So you're sensitive to these things, and as long as you're sensitive, then potentially you can get something done. If there is a gender difference between the two of you, if one of you is male and the other is female, then potentially, of course, there's going to be a misunderstanding. Potentially, there's going to be a misunderstanding. If there's an age difference, I keep talking about how old I am, but the reality is that since I get to deal with so many young people, I kind of understand where you're coming from. And of course, I use words like groovy and whatnot, but that's from my era. And of course, Joe's back in the back. Every time I say groovy, he just about vomits back there, poor thing. Because groovy's not a word that you guys use. Is he leaving? Okay. Anyway, so age can be a factor as well. You need to understand how these people feel about what's going on. Age differences. Ethical considerations and problem identification. Practitioners need to support essential ethical principles related to autonomy and self-determination. Let me just talk about that. Yeah, we're down here. The practitioner's role is to support choices of clients, even if they feel that they should make that you feel that they should make other choices, or they feel that they should make other choices. You need to support them in however they feel. And that is the end of chapter 12. As soon as we get through chapter 15, we're going to start counseling. Some of you have your histories in, some of you don't. If you don't, then get them in as soon as possible. Well, I'm probably going to be doing this for another week, maybe 2 weeks, and then we're going to start counseling. You'll have 2 counseling sessions. We will have counseling sessions in here where you're actually talking face to face with somebody, and then you'll be dealing with somebody online at the same time. But I need to get your record. I need to get these histories in so that I can create your records. So that we can at least look at other people's histories. Those of you who have finished, thank you very much. I think I have 7 out of 35 or something like that. So go ahead and finish those histories. Make up a name, make up a problem, and do your research on that problem, of course. All right, I'll stop blathering here. Chapter 13. I have to warn you about chapter 13. Chapter 13 is blinding because of the orange and gray. So don't look at the orange for too long, or the words will start moving around the screen, as odd as that seems. You can try it if you want. I'll tell you that, I guess the orange is worse on my computer than it is on the screen. Okay, you guys will be okay. Don't worry about it. So chapter 14 deals with establishing goals. Okay, now that we've got the individual convinced that they have a problem and that they need to change things, now they need to establish goals, things that they need to do in the future. As I told you before, my wife's a list maker. I am not. I figure if I can't remember it, I've had something that she told me that I needed to do for like 2 weeks, and I'm supposed to call the insurance company or something, and only I can do it, as strange as that sounds, but I've been putting this thing off for 2 weeks. So I wrote myself a note downstairs that this afternoon I will actually do it. I have to call the insurance company. Damn it. Oh, sorry. I've given another one away. I'm losing students. This is okay. So I apologize for being so obnoxious. Identifying general goals. The goals set the direction of the work to be done, and of course, if you're a list maker, then establishing goals are something that you want to do. This is my wife, not me. I'm not a list maker. She's a list maker. But luckily she doesn't make lists for me. That would irritate me to no end, I guess. But then again, I'm kind of a flexible, easygoing, amoeboid type individual. So these things don't bother me at all. Clear goals are necessary in planning steps to be taken. They are what clients hope to achieve working with a practitioner. One of the things that we need to talk about, and I've actually talked about this before, but what you need to establish your own voice as a practitioner. You don't want to be a counselor like me. You would have to have my personality in order to be a counselor like me. You need to establish your own, you need to figure out your own voice. You need to understand who you are. You need to deal with things in your own way. There is no wrong way to counsel unless it's shaking your finger a lot. So, however you do it is not the wrong. It's not the wrong way. Okay. However you do it is not the wrong way. It's the way that you do things. All you need to do is make sure that you're fairly ethical with your counseling. So when you start counseling each other, despite the fact that you really don't have nobody has any problems. When you start counseling each other, you're going to say, oh, am I saying the right thing? Don't worry about that. You will always say the right thing. And you'll always say the wrong thing. I've had clients that every time I've told you this before, every time I said something, it was wrong. No matter what I said, I could repeat what they had just said and it would be completely wrong. Oh no, that's not right at all. Just because, I don't know, they're trying to be argumentative. They were in that stage. They're in that pre-counseling stage. They really don't want to be counseled. They just want to argue. And that's okay. Eventually, you'll get them to the point where they will tell you what their problem is. Since you're so damn stupid, eventually they're going to tell you what their problem is. I thought you were smart. This is my problem. Oh, okay. Well, let's start dealing with that. And then, of course, then you can get them to talk. Some people want you to fix them. They want you to do it right now. And if you can't do it right now, obviously you're not very good at it. And then they'll go find another counselor, which is fine because eventually they're going to come up, they're going to get to the point where they're ready to start fixing themselves. And at that stage, that counselor will be the most brilliant person in the world. Up until that point, nobody is a good counselor. That's something that you need to remember. You're going to have failures, and mostly your failures aren't as much with you as they are with your clients. They're not ready yet, and so they will change. So two things. One, you're not going to be able to fix everybody because some people aren't ready to be fixed. And the other thing is that your voice has to be a genuine voice. So I can't teach you how to have your own voice. So however you do it is the right way to do it for you. Okay? I'm from Indiana. I do things like Hoosiers do things. Oh, they are the most boring people in the world. The Hoosiers, I swear. You go into a conference with all these people from Indiana, it is so boring. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you were a counselor, what was your, did you save a life or did you help a person?
Did I save a life or help a person? I like to think I have saved a lot of lives. You never know when you stop somebody from killing themselves. Well, that one guy, I'm pretty damn sure I stopped him from killing himself. Yeah, I was a generalist, and I didn't have a specialty. I was just a generalist. I just helped whoever came in. Are you okay? Did he try to trip you?
Yeah, I think my Joe.
He's
worried about his Joe.
Asked about it earlier.
Oh, God. So now I'm losing 3 people who just walked out of the room. What have I done? Does that answer?
I was just curious, yeah.
Okay.
'Cause
Okay. That wasn't my...
I want to be a counselor, I just,
And the one thing that I need to tell you is, sure, I've got one way of doing things, and you've got a totally different way of doing things. Your life experiences are completely different than mine. And so you're going to do things a lot differently than I do things. And that's not wrong. I mean, some people teach you that there's one way to do everything and it's my way. That's not right at all. If you're not genuine, then you're not going to be able to do it. But as long as you're genuine, you should be okay. You should be fine. As long as you don't try to parent the person. If you understand what I'm talking about. Moms like to be in charge. They like everybody to do what she told them to do. But that doesn't work in counseling. You can't be the mother. Sometimes you need to be. And that's what they're looking for. But usually it's an individual that needs to fix themselves. You're never gonna let your kids fix themselves because they're gonna keep making mistakes. You don't want your kids to make mistakes. But as far as your clients are concerned, they have already made those mistakes and now they need to fix it. And they're the only ones, it's gotta come from inside. They've got to want to fix it in order to cure themselves, to fix themselves. Alcoholics, only an alcoholic can fix an alcoholic themselves. They have to fix themselves. I mean, I guess I could lock them in a cell for 3 weeks until they're all dried out. And actually, I've been involved with that kind of stuff. When I was in the service, we used to dry people out all the time. Not a fun job. Oh, he's back. Okay. Leave his Jello alone, okay? Okay, so what are we doing here? Okay. They are what clients hope to achieve working with the goals, okay. So we're talking about goals here. So they need to set goals. And some people are goal setters and some people aren't. But of course, you need to talk about these things all from time to time in order for them to remember what's going on. Because people forget. People specifically forget. I'm going to forget this. I do this kind of stuff all the time. If I'm having trouble with something, I'll try to forget it. If something is traumatic to me, I'll try to forget it. And that's the way I've been able to survive throughout most of my life. I forget all the bad things and remember all the good things. So if you ask me, I will tell you that my life has been perfect because I don't remember the bad stuff. Well, I do from time to time, but it's usually a joke. I usually bring it up as a joke. So we're talking about goals. They are the client's vision of what life would be like if their problems were solved. So this is where you want to be. This is where you want to get. So if we're talking about weight loss, of course, you weigh 220 pounds, and you want to be down to a size, 12 outfit. I don't know. These
Size
things,
0.
Size 0? Is that right? My daughter used to wear a size 0 pair of pants. What is that? I mean, that didn't even make sense. I'd wash her clothes and I'd be folding her pants and they had a waist like this. I think that's what it means. She had no waist whatsoever. I don't know how she got all of her organs inside that tiny little pair of pants. They look like kids' pants, Tiny, tiny, tiny. What are we talking about? Oh, so it's what it would look like. So if you weigh 220 pounds, then you need to lose 40 or 50 pounds, or whatever it is that you decide you need to lose. Goals must be mutually established between the practitioner and the client. It needs to come from the client, and it needs to be agreed to by the practitioner. That's usually the way it works. If it comes from the client first, then they're more likely to try to actually achieve it. If you establish their goals, forget it. It ain't going to happen. Practitioners should not try to guide clients. The clients need to be in charge of themselves. Satisfactory work depends on practitioners' ability to collaborate with the client. And that's the problem. As I was saying before, a lot of clients will reject you. Clients will try to reject you. They want to reject you. But if you're genuine, then they will have a difficult time. They will have a difficult time rejecting you. If you are the kind of person that they would want as a friend, if you are genuine, then you're more likely to keep that client. I don't know. Some clients, they want to be successful because they want you to like them.
They get picky?
Oh yeah, they're really picky because they don't really want to do it anyway. I can't work with this guy, I can't work with this person. I think I'll go to the bar, This guy really upset me. I think I'm going to go to the bar. Well, he's just looking for an excuse to go to the bar. That's what alcoholics do. They're really good at it. They're the best. They're always searching for an excuse to go get drunk. So their wives are nagging them, their children are bothering them. The boss at work is a slave driver. You know, they're always seeking an excuse. So they go to counseling because they need to dry out. So they go to counseling, and what happens? They can't stand the counselor. So what do you have to do? How do you cope? Well, you cope by going out and getting drunk. And actually all they're looking for is another excuse to go out and get drunk. So it's a lot of fun. And we can play these games for the rest of your life until you've had an accident or you drink yourself to death. You can continue to play these stupid games. It's all a big game. It's all a huge game. My life has been one huge game. I played this game, and then I played that game, and then now I'm playing this game. This is a fun game. Until the end of the semester when I have to grade everything. Oh. If you notice, I've been staying pretty much on top of all my grading. I mean, that's fairly impressive. I'm only like a week behind. That's not bad. Sometimes I'm 2 or 3 or 4 weeks behind. So I'm really doing fairly well. Here, that's me making excuses. Questions that seek clarification help clients figure out what goals they are motivated to achieve. So that's what you need to do. You need to articulate what it is that what their goal is all about, what their goal deals with. The more they articulate it, the more specific they are, the more likely that they will see exactly what they have to do. The more generalized it is, the easier it is for them to ignore it. But the more specific it is, the fact that they've stated it over and over and over again, and I'm going to give you examples in just a second, but the more they've stated them over and over again, the more they're likely to stick with their goals and try to achieve them. Exception-finding questions are useful. Exception-finding questions are the ones that are looking for exceptions to what they're supposed to be doing. So you're going to go to the gym. Are you going to do cardio, or are you going to lift? You know, these are specific. These are exception-finding questions. Well, I'm not going to run. I hate running because I have bad knees. Okay, so now we know that you're not going to run when you go to the gym. You're just going to lift weights. Yes, I'm going to lift weights and maybe play basketball. Okay, so we know exactly what you're going to do when you go to the gym. Now, when that individual goes to the gym, he's not even going to jump onto the treadmill because he knows that he's got bad knees and he's not going to do it anyway. So now he has specifics as to what he's going to do. So that's one of the reasons why we ask them exception finding questions. Because we want to know exactly what they're going to do. We want them to know exactly what they're going to do. It doesn't really matter to me. He could go to the gym and sit and drink coffee for 2 hours or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm just trying to put that in his own mind as to what he is going to do and what he's not going to do, or she, whichever the case may be. Explore times when the problem was not present. You need to look at when you were younger, when you were more innocent, when you weren't having these problems. Times when the problems were smaller or less problematic, of course. And of course, as you get older, things change, your body changes. And now we have some examples. Open-ended questions. At the end of our work together, what do you want your life to look like? To be like, I'm sorry. What do you want your life to be like? When the problems that brought you here are solved, what do you want to be thinking, doing, or feeling? Open-ended questions. Okay, this is establishing a light at the end of the tunnel. You're trying to get them to tell you what they want their life to look like. And that becomes a light at the end of the tunnel. Most problems, the reason that they're there is because they're stuck in a tunnel and they see no way out. And it's your job to establish the way out. But of course, if you're in a tunnel, there's only one way to go, forward. But what you're trying to do here is you're trying to establish a light at the end of the tunnel. What do you want the final outcome to be? Is this a possibility? When we have finished our work together, what might other people see you doing that you aren't doing now? Tell me about the picture of what you want your family to look like. This is what worked with the guy that was gay, that wouldn't admit that he was gay. This is what worked. Because he really loved his children. He loved his children. And they weren't responding to him. And he didn't understand why they weren't responding to him. But the reason they weren't responding to him is because he wasn't being genuine with them. Everybody knew he was gay but him. And he wouldn't admit it. Including his children. And once he admitted that he had there wasn't a problem. Once he admitted that this was the real him, then his children started paying more attention to him because he was being more genuine. Yes.
How old was his children?
They were teenagers. So he'd been doing this he'd been doing this all of his life, of course, but he had a wife that he liked her, he didn't love her. I mean, she was like a sister to him. So, there wasn't that connection between husband and wife because he wasn't sexually attracted to her. And he knew this from the beginning. And he claimed it was her fault. She gained weight, she lost weight, she did her hair wrong, all the excuses in the world. I mean, I heard them all. He's like an alcoholic. He was just in complete denial that there was any problem whatsoever, that he had any problem whatsoever. And he just needed to deal with reality. This is who he was, and he needed to be his real person. And until he was his real person, nobody could accept him. He was angry. Of course he was angry. He was angry because he wasn't living the life that he should have been living. So he was angry with himself. That was tough. And of course, who did he take it out on? Well, he took it out on his wife, he took it out on his kids. He did a good job at work. He was a brilliant man. He was an amazing intellect. But of course, he would get himself into situations where he would take on too much work. He was using it to displace his, thinking about his problem. So he'd take on too much work at his job, and he would spend all night at his job. It wasn't like he was, going out and having affairs with people. That's not what was going on at all. His problem was that he wouldn't admit who he was. Eventually, of course, everything worked out.
So how did his kids know that he was gay?
They'd always known he was gay. And one of them, his oldest son, had told him, Dad, this isn't you. And it made him mad, of course, when his son told him that he thought he was gay. I know. Interesting situation. Everybody knew he was gay. Everybody knew it, except him, and he wouldn't admit it. And of course, everybody was afraid to say something like that to somebody. I didn't say it to him, but I'll tell you what, he really took it out on me because he was coming into my office. He's coming into my office at quitting time and shaking his finger at me like I had anything to do with it. I had nothing to do with it. Of course, it didn't bother me because I knew what the problem was. And I had to give him an environment, a safe environment where he could admit to himself, where he could inspect his own mind. What he did, he would go to the bar and get drunk, and then he wouldn't have to worry about it. But he wasn't an alcoholic. The only reason he drank was so that he wouldn't have to admit what was going on. Anyway, I heard all about his wife. Oh, I swear. Every time it's his birthday and she makes him the vegetables he doesn't like, that kind of thing. It was funny. She put too much salt on the popcorn, oh my God, how horrible is that? Yeah. Let's pretend that these problems are solved. What differences will you notice in your life if these problems are solved? Sunshine and roses. Identify measurable, attainable, positive, and specific goals. This is known as the MAPS technique. Developing maps, developing measurable, attainable, positive, and specific goals. Make it possible for clients and practitioners to evaluate changes that have been made. It provides a clear direction and a focus for work. Okay. I find this a little bit too directive. This chapter is a little bit too directive. They're trying to tell you how to fix people. And I don't think that's, they're trying to create a formula. And formulas are fine, but they don't always work with everybody. And especially in counseling. I mean, everybody, it's almost an art form. The reality is that teaching is an art. It's not a science. Counseling is an art. It's not a science. Medicine is an art. It's not a science. In order to convince people that they need to change, you have to be able to talk them in. You have to get them to talk themselves into it. That's what you have. That's the trick. So it's an art form, and I can come up with a formula. And actually, that's exactly what this is. But formulas don't always work. Formulas don't always fit. Like with my friend. It took months of him coming in and making me late. Boy, my wife thought there was something strange going on with me. Maps, we're talking about maps. Will you give me an example of what positive communication sounds like to you? What was I watching last night? Some strange movie. Oh, The Mexican. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Mexican. It has Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt. And he's a ne'er-do-well. And they've gone to marriage counseling, so they keep spewing this stuff because they've been to marriage counseling. And they argue in the manner that they have been taught by the people at the counseling sessions. And so they keep spewing this stuff. Things like, will you give me an example of what positive communication sounds like? What does positive communication sound like to you? I know, it sounds kind of stupid. Positive communication, well, let me think about that for a second. What is positive communication? When you have positive communication, what will you be doing that you weren't doing now? When you have positive communication, in other words, when you're not attacking one another, that's pretty much what positive communication is. Maps, what's the positive? Oh, the positive is right here. Okay. Positive communication. All right. In what situations do you want to have more positive communication? Oh, jeez, I'm sorry. I know, this is a formula. I'll be okay in a minute. I want to get better grades, so I will write down each assignment. Oh, they're talking about specific goals, measurable and specific goals. I want to get better grades, so I will write down each assignment I get this week. Remember, we're dealing with specifics. We need to exclude all of the extraneous things, and we need to deal with specifics. So what exactly are you going to do? Well, in this case, this individual is going to write down all their assignments. Whoops. I want to lose weight, so I will go to the gym 3 times this week. It's almost like a contract. What are you going to do? I'm going to write down all my assignments. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week.
I have a question. So what, you're saying this positive communication, what word would you use except positive?
How about good? How about non-destructive? I I know. Talking about positive communication, I don't, what is positive? How do we even define that? I'm sure they've got a really good definition for it. But it's not a word that I would use, positive communication. As a matter of fact, I'd talk around that. I would try to get them to talk about when the communication wasn't destructive. That's really what positive communication is. But you know, just saying positive communication, it's so specific, and it sounds like you want a one-word answer. And we don't. We want to ask them open-ended questions so that we can get all kinds of good information about what's going on with the way that they talk to each other.
I think it's a reason, there's a reason why it's in the back of the book, is because you work your way up to that. I feel that. I mean, you can't just go up to someone and say, hey, you know, I think that you should do this, and then expect them to try, like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, that's the reaction you're going to get. But I think that if you work your way up to that level of trust, then of course, positive
Right.
communication, you get a feel for how the person communicates. So if you got a person who's really is complaining about something, and you try to offer some recommendations or advice, like, well, why don't we use this as your strong suit of, like, okay, well, if you feel that this is something, you know,
Right.
I'm just basing off a encounter I had recently.
Right.
You know, a student came up to me and started complaining about online courses and all these different things, and
It wasn't me that they were
Yeah,
complaining about.
no,
Yeah, it was.
it was-
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
it was, no, it was not you. It was not you. No, but it was,
It's okay, I'll
they were
correct.
talking about the.
I'll be all right in a minute. Okay, no.
It was about the online registration.
Right.
And I didn't, no matter what I came up with as far as kind of, not a resolution or
Right.
a solution or anything, it was more just opinions, I guess.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but.
It does. It does.
Everything I came up with was almost turned into a negative. But it's this, or it's this. And I was like, okay, well, and it almost got to the point of like, well, there's nothing I can tell you that'll make you feel better. It's almost like you just want to stay in that negative state of mind.
You became.
But you can't tell that to a person to say that. But
Didn't you become the dumbest person in the world?
Well, yeah.
Every solution you came up with was not right.
Yeah, and then you got to take into perspective too, or take into account that you do get better treatment. You know, they're different, like that aspect of, well, things are a little, her road of, I guess, coming into that college was pretty rough compared
Right.
to mine, or compared to
Right.
Someone else's. So
Sure.
it's really different to say, well, why don't you try to be more open with people, or as far as try to give the respect that you think that you want. You know, you can't just go up to the administration or to admissions and say, well, I want my transcripts right now. The first thing they're going to say is, once they get that, is like, you got to go see the cashier, and they'll give you attitude, the same attitude. That's what I've seen
Exactly.
personally.
You are right.
But it's kind of being, an ass kisser is really what it comes down to. I mean, that's what I thought. Like, if you feel like, oh, good morning, how's it going? And you feel that when you build that rapport with someone, and moving on would be something, I think, more easy going for the person who's given the respect. Like, you try to tell it to someone, and kind of, but I think positive communication is where you would definitely have to build that trust to get
Right.
there. I mean, I think that's the reason why it's kind of maybe in the back of the book. That's just my personal.
Yeah, and you're right, and you're mentioning situations that are very similar to what I was just talking about. Like sometimes there is no right answer.
Yeah, and I can base this like from personal experience with marriage. Within the first 2 years, like we're constantly at each other's necks, and like we're trying to get used to each other, living
Sure.
with one another. And phone conversations, long distance conversations are different than living with a person.
Oh, no kidding.
And then compared to now, to where it's like, okay, well, what's the point of arguing when we can just definitely talk about it? That definitely does help. That I feel is positive communication instead of saying, like, well, you're stupid for doing this. That's just dumb. I don't know. That's
There you go, negative communication.
negative communication, but-
It's the opposite of what he just said.
so I don't know. I feel that you definitely have to build. It's
Right.
just a sense of trust.
Right. And without that sense of trust, then you're probably not going to be able to communicate with them at all. Similar to the situation that you had with the student that just wanted to rant.
Mm-hmm.
And you were They couldn't go up to the president and say that kind of stuff, because probably they couldn't get in, for one thing. But they had you trapped, so.
Well,
no-
I think sometimes that's what students just want though, and they just want just to rant and then like,
Sure.
they feel better about it. Oh, okay, well, and that's really what it comes down to. Is, all right.
Well, that jerk Aaron knows about it now, so I'm okay.
Apparently, it's like someone's gonna get done about it, and if it doesn't, then you know, someone's gonna come back to you for it. And it's just a revolving. That's just what I've my personal experience with.
Exactly. And I apologize for picking on the word positive communication. I know it's a buzzword, and that's one of my problems, is that it is a buzzword. And I'm not a fan of buzzwords. I apologize for, you know, these are all words that are used in psychology, and of course, you know, you're going to read them in other contexts. And here I am attacking this word specifically. But you may be right. That's why they put it in the back of the book. And they did haven't used positive communication up to this point. It has to do with this formula. And of course, positive is one of the aspects of this formula. So let's go through some more of these things and see what we get. If you can pin them down to a specific, and these are specifics. So now they have a goal, and if they don't go to the gym 3 times, they're going to come back to you and say, you know, I only went twice, or I only went once. I was so tired after work, I couldn't go to the gym. I didn't go at all. And of course, then you can set new goals. So for next week, if this is the goal that they have, going to the gym 3 times, what are you going to say to them next week when they come in and say, I didn't go at all?
It's a new week.
I'm sorry?
It's a new week.
It's a new week, so what's your goal for this week? Should it be 3 times?
At least. I mean, I wouldn't tell them to push it to, hey, you're going to double up this weekend.
Exactly.
You know, you tell them, like,
I was
it's a new
thinking,
week.
I was wondering if the Marine would do that. Okay, for punishment, drop and give me 50. That's first, and then you're going to go 3 times this week and 2 times, 3 times for last week and 2 times for this week. By golly, we're going to get. Maybe you shouldn't say that. Maybe you should reduce the number of times they go to the gym. Make it more doable for this select individual. Okay, so you're really tired on Tuesdays and Tuesday nights there's good television on. For me there is. NCIS is also. I always watch NCIS. Tuesday nights, so you can't go to the gym on Tuesday nights, but how about Wednesday nights? There's crap on television. Grab a burger before you go, and maybe you can actually make it to the gym. There you go. Okay. My son always eats before he goes to the lifts. He lifts almost every day, but he'll eat protein. He tries to take in enough protein, and he needs energy in order to do his workout. So he always eats. I don't know if that'll work or not. Let's go to the gym again. Oh no, let's go to AA meetings. I want to become sober, so I will attend 1 AA meeting this week. Depending on where you are, a lot of times they have AA meetings every day in select places. If it's a large enough city, New York, Chicago, you can find an AA meeting just about any time. But a lot of places they'll only have AA meetings once a week, and of course that is a goal, to go to the AA meeting once a week. As a matter of fact, that was on. Did anybody see NCIS last night? Okay, NCIS. One of the guys was going to AA meetings, but he was never able to admit that he had a problem. But he'd gone for 2 months and not said a word. You know, one of the things you have to do at an AA meeting, first thing you have to do at an AA meeting is that you have to introduce yourself, not as who you are, but just your first name, and you have to admit that you're an alcoholic. That's what you have to do. So, of course, there are a lot of different meetings, not just the AA meetings, drug abuse meetings, sex abuse meetings, those kinds of things. And the first thing you have to do is admit that you have a problem. And of course, sometimes these people will go to meetings for an extended length of time before they even admit that they have a problem. I want more friends, so I will sit next to 2 different people in each of my classes. New information has come out about the Newtown shooter, the guy that, the kid that shot away, that blew away all those first graders. His biggest problem was that he had Asperger's syndrome. That was a problem. But the second big, actually that led to another problem. The other problem that he had was that he didn't have any friends, and he didn't want to interact with people. And he became isolated from everybody. So he was a recluse. Are we seeing a pattern here? Recluses becoming shooters. The guy in Las Vegas was a recluse. This kid's a recluse. The two shooters at Columbine, they only interacted with each other. And then they decided to shoot up the school. But they only interacted with each other. So I think may potentially be seeing a pattern. Of course, we haven't established it yet. The FBI hasn't established it yet, so we can't talk about it yet. But it looks like we've got a new pattern establishing, especially with the kid from Newtown.
It's kind of convenient though, isn't it?
What?
Aren't they all white shooters though?
Aren't they all recluses is the question. They're all white, yeah, they're all.
But if a black kid shoots up the school, he's already committed.
Black kids don't shoot up the school.
That's what I'm saying. But if he was, there'd be that pattern automatically. But it's kind of convenient
That he's a recluse?
Term on him, yeah. No?
I don't know about, we need to have a black shooter before we can even talk about the black shooters. But we're not gonna have a black shooter. That's the problem.
Why?
Why? They don't have the same anger, evidently. I don't know. Maybe it's because of that Viking blood makes them.
They're always on the
voters.
media though.
We don't have black people going in and shooting up groups of people.
They're the ones that are being shot.
They're the ones that are being shot, exactly. But not in these school situations. They're just going in and killing everybody. Well, the shooter from Las Vegas, he wasn't just targeting black people. It was a country and western. It was a country and western thing. I don't know how many.
The one that was the shooter in Colorado a while back.
The one that shot up the theater,
No, the school.
Columbine.
Yeah.
Okay. They didn't pick on any specific. They picked on people that they thought were bullies. Yeah. I don't think they picked on a specific race, unless they were all white people. Columbine's primarily white. So, I don't know. We may be seeing a pattern, but of course Aaron doesn't agree with me, doesn't like patterns. He just wants to target all the white people. All white people are shooters. Okay. I'm an excellent shot, by the way. I shot expert when I was in the military.
Don't shoot us then.
That would lie. I don't even have a gun. But if I start accumulating ammunition, they went into his house and it was full of ammunition. Where did all these guns and where did all this ammunition come from? They were all legally bought by his mother. Why accumulate all that ammunition? Why would she do that? It's mothers that are the problem. You write that down. It's mothers that are the problem. She bought him all those guns. He had a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. Who buys semi-automatic shotguns? For a kid, sawed off. I know, it's theoretically illegal. Who does that? Anyway. Okay, so we're trying to make these people non-recluses. As a matter of fact, one of the shooters, Klebold, I think, Klebold and Harris at Columbine, one of them said, you know, if somebody talks to me today, then I probably won't do this. So maybe being a recluse has something to do with feeling alone. So feeling that like you can, like other people aren't as human as you are. Anyway, this individual wants to sit by two people, and I think if he's a white guy, it's probably a positive thing, because then they won't become a shooter. I just thought I'd mention that. A goal needs to be something that the client believes is possible based on available resources such as time, money, and people power. Establishing a series of small goals helps clients experience success. It is important that the size of the goal seems attainable to a client and reasonable to the practitioner. You're going to have a client that wants to do everything today. They want to achieve everything today. And you got to slow these people down and give them small baby steps. They need to take baby steps before they take that giant leap. But you're going to have clients that are type A personalities, and they're going to want to fix everything right now. And of course, that's impossible. If they do that, they're just going to slip back because they're not going to be able to do everything right now. Unattainable goals involve changing another person. If they're having problems with their spouse, and you've got one spouse and the other spouse isn't coming in to see you, what's the probability you're going to be able to fix that person? That you can't get the other person to change. The only person you can change is the person that you're dealing with. And of course, you need to make sure that they understand that. They're not going to be able to fix their boss. Their boss has this problem. Their boss has this problem, and I can't do anything about it. The only person that I can deal with is the individual that comes in to see me, and that's the only person they can fix. They can't fix their boss either. They can't fix their spouse. The spouse has to come in for counseling in order for them to be fixed. Time to reach the goal must be relatively proximate to the decision to change. In other words, it has to be something that you can fix right now. And you have to be able to work with it. Let's say that you want to lose weight. How much weight can you lose in a week? How much weight should you lose in a week? I want to lose 50 pounds. I want to be a size 8 by the end of the month, by the end of November. I don't know what a size 8 is, but I want to lose 50 pounds. How much weight should I lose every day? Every week? Any ideas? I want to lose 50 pounds, and I want to do it in a month. Is that attainable? No, it's not. How in the world am I going to lose 50 pounds? I could starve myself to death. That might work. But what's a healthy weight to lose in any given week?
3, 5?
It's a little bit much.
1 maybe?
1 to 1.5. If you're trying to lose 2 or 3 or 5 pounds a week, that's hard. That's really hard. One of the things you're going to be doing is you're going to be losing a lot of water weight, and that will work for the first 3 or 4 weeks. But after that, you've lost you can't lose any more water. Your body won't do it. And so your body will go into starvation mode. The other thing that happens is you go into starvation mode. So if you try to lose more than a pound or a pound and a half a week, then actually you're just putting yourself on a diet where you're going to slip back almost right away. As soon as you go and celebrate with a beer, it's all back on again. And that was only 12 ounces. I only had 12 ounces. What happened? Well, it's the water. Not only that, but you put more sodium in your system. And the sodium, of course, retained water. That's how we retain water. Anyway, okay, so it needs to be something that can be done right away. So if they want to lose 50 pounds by the end of the month, then that's way, way too fast. Maybe 50 pounds by the end of the year. Maybe. Probably not. It's possible. Wait a minute, that's 52 weeks. Yeah, that's possible. You could lose 50 pounds in a year. But no more than that. You really can't do more than that. Clients who participate in setting goals are more likely to believe goals are achievable, and so that's why we have to take these baby steps. We're trying to teach them that these things can be done. Goals should be visualized in concrete, specific behavioral terms. I want to be happier. That's not anything that is concrete, specific, or I want to be happier? No, I want to change this. I want to change something specific that I can do. Happiness has to do with, I don't know what happiness has to do with. How do you get to be happy? I know, I'll give you a happy pill. There are happy pills. We'll give you happy pills. That works. I'll raise your serotonin level. Maybe that would work. And maybe it won't. It's possible that it won't. Your goal is to lose 15 pounds. Would it be reasonable to lose 1.5 pounds this week? And of course, that's about right. She's putting on her t-shirt. I don't know why I put that picture in there. Why is she walking down the street? Why is she walking? My question is, why is she walking down the street putting her shirt on? She's walking around in her underwear. I'm as shocked as you are, Edison. I agree. I should be. Hey, don't bring me into that. Do it your own. Maybe she's cold. This is a job bra, so she can walk around in it, right? Isn't that the way it works? You can walk around in. Evidently, you can walk around in your underwear because I've seen those television shows with the angels, with the Victoria's Secret ladies in it, with the wings. Those ladies have their underwear. That ain't right. Something wrong with that. Your goal is to turn your homework in on time. Not in this classroom, of course. I don't worry about your homework. But do turn your homework in eventually, please. Would it be reasonable to set aside an hour an evening to do homework for this class? Would that be reasonable? That makes sense. Okay. Your goal is to attend AA meetings. Would it be reasonable to acquire a list of local meetings this week? Right. Isn't that a good idea? I know, let's get a list of AA, where they hold AA meetings and their schedules, so that you can decide where you're going to go for your AA meetings. Now, usually what happens with AA meetings, they're the best in the evening, because instead of going to the bar, you go to the AA meeting instead. What a great idea. Okay, let's do that. Let's find local AA meeting. Do they have AA around here?
You can Chinley.
In Chinley they have AA?
Yeah,
Anybody know?
45.
Fort Defiance?
Yeah.
That's not that far away, is it?
Far.
Too far? Not in my car. I can get down there in 15, 20 minutes. I know. If I don't have to go slow down going through the town. I'm kidding.
It takes me 45 minutes.
45 minutes? See, I can do it in 45 minutes.
People what?
I drive from there.
This is so depressing. Oh, it's time to quit. He's right. No, Aaron's right. It's time to quit. I apologize. I tried to drag you guys longer than I'm supposed to.